Hey guys, what's up? This is Nick from Beer and Bat Reps, and today we are doing another unit-by-unit breakdown for Space Wolves in 9th edition. Today it's going to be Lukas the Trickster, aka the Jackal Wolf, aka Loki, basically, but in Warhammer. So today we're going to be going over stats, rule changes. We'll go over the model, what we think of the model. We'll go over his auras, his abilities, what he does on the battlefield. We'll do pros and cons, whether or not I think it's prudent to include him in your list, whether or not I myself will include him in my list, and we'll also do the lore and fluff background for him. Pour yourself a pint, settle in, and let's learn about Lukas the Trickster. I wanted to start with the model itself. So it shows its age a little bit. It's back when the proportions are a little more squished. I don't have a better way of saying that. They're just squished. The arms aren't quite long enough. The torso is kind of small. The legs are super long. But for a firstborn Marine. So clearly not Primaris. But his claw is great. The plasma pistol looks fine. He's got good detail. He has like a ponytail braid attached to his waist. I'll be honest, I have not read his novel, so I'm sure there's something to that. But his face and his mane and his little braided hair attached to his sideburn all look great. His goatee looks great. The facial expression is full of coy, trickiness. He's the trickster. You can tell he's having fun on the battlefield. He's got a plan up his sleeves, and that little cheese-eating grin, he's ready to cause some mayhem. So I think it's a win. I mean, he's got the classic fur cloak. He's got the classic old school stance of come at me dancing, kind of like the Wolfen stance. I'm sure he's very, very small. I've never actually seen the model in person, but I'm sure it's very small, as all the old fine cast firstborn Marines are. I think you could do a pretty easy conversion to a Primaris just to make the model look more proportionate. But, don't come at me old school Marine fans, but I think the new Primaris look much better in terms of size and proportion. I'm not a fan of the super old school rogue trader, tiny arms, tiny legs, head down between their shoulders. I like a more proportionate, realistic looking model. I think this does the job just fine. If it were me, I'd probably, find a cool way to convert it onto a Primaris body just to make it more proportionate and intimidating. But, that's not actually too important. The model itself has plenty of detail, plenty of character. I could see why a lot of people love this model. Let's get into the lore. Within the close-knit ranks of the Space Wolves, Lukas Strifeson has become synonymous with the irreverence, spirit, and the rebelliousness of youth. Universally despised by the Wolf Lords, Lukas has never made it out of the Blood Claws despite his abilities being far in advance of many a Wolf Guard. This fact is completely immaterial to Lukas, for he cares not one jot for the approval of authority. Provided he is free to work his mischief and rack up a high body count in the process, Lukas is content. Though he is undisputedly one of the most cunning individuals in the chapter, Lukas is called Trickster by many, many detractors, for he will pull every ruse high and low to get his way. Tall, rangy, but not particularly broad compared to his fellows, Lukas is a rebel and a rogue who delights in sowing anarchy and misrule. He epitomizes the anti-authoritarian streak of his chapter and is far too busy puncturing the egos of the pompous to dwell on musty old sagas and ancient battle doctrine. A near legendary figure amongst Fenris's womanfolk, Lukas was once famous for sharing 12 beds in a single night. But since his elevation to the ranks of Space Wolves, it is Lukas's contributions to the chapter's war efforts that have earned him lasting respect amongst his fellow Blood Claws. He has faked a series of transmissions that led directly to an Orc civil war, infected the mainframe of a traitor cell of Adeptus Mechanicus with their own necrovirus, and lured a Lord of the Ward Bearers into making planetfall upon thin ice, resulting in hundreds of renegade Space Marines plunging into the haunted depths of the Sea of Lost Souls. Only once has Lukas been bested. After an abortive attempt to cripple the flagship of Prince Slicius of the Dark Eldar, Lukas was set adrift in space, his heart cut out as a souvenir. Only a Space Marine could survive such an ordeal, and only one such as Lukas could laugh about it later. Lukas's inventive solutions are not confined solely to the enemies of the Imperium. He has had something of a cult following amongst the Bloodclaws since he accidentally locked an inquisitorial Genotax delegation in a Grok's breeding pen whilst the creatures were in a season, and he risked death by flogging when he spiked the ale of the arrogant wolf lord Hrothgar with the concentrated venom of a bloat toad. Though he would never betray his brothers in times of need, Lukas thinks nothing of turning his enemy's strength against them. Even unarmed, Lukas is the dirtiest fighter in the chapter, but when equipped with his personalized wolf claw and plasma pistol, the trickster is a fearsome foe indeed. In battle or friendly scrums, opponents attempting to strike Lukas find it difficult to land a telling blow. This is partly due to his taunts. His rude gestures transcend all languages, but even more so due to his pelt. The hide was taken from a chameleonic Doppelgängel, and the shimmering, conflicting images that blur before an enemy are confusing in the extreme. Endlessly spiteful, Lukas does not forget a slight and repays what he sees as wanton authority with clever and humiliating pranks. To truly cross his path or cause he or his brothers actual harm is to invite an unusual and painful death. As a final joke, known only to himself, Lukas has ensured that he alone will have the last laugh, for he has a stasis bomb wired in place of his missing secondary heart, so that whoever finally bests him might also be frozen in time as an eternal monument. A jest too far. It is unusual but not unheard of for a member of the Space Wolves to switch great companies. This typically happens after campaigns where mixed formations are forced to fight as one, and a battle brother develops a strong pack bond with those outside of his company. It is unlikely, however, that any single warrior has changed great companies more often than has Lukas the Trickster. His reasons have nothing to do with camaraderie, but rather quite the opposite. On one occasion, Lukas roused the volcanic wrath of Bjorn Stormwolf by seeding the Wolf Lord's Terminator armor with microscopic blood lice. Bristling with indignation and no small amount of uncontrollable itching, Stormwolf battered the sniggering Jackal Wolf unconscious. Fortunately for the Bloodclaw, Ragnar Blackmane interceded before the giant could land a finishing blow, claiming the mischievous warrior for his own great company and, in doing so, saving Lukas's life. Now in the Blackmanes, the quick-witted warrior has also spent time in 5 other great companies, each time being quote-unquote moved on to separate him from those victims of his escapades that sought revenge. Okay, it's stats time, boys and girls. He is 80 points, he's only 4 power level, and most importantly, he's an elite choice, not an HQ. Lukas the Trickster. He has a movement of 6 inches, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds only 4, attacks 5, now we're talking, leadership 8, save 3+. So right off the bat, wounds 4. That's pretty low for a Space Marine character. I'll admit it's because I'm used to Primaris and that extra wound. Clearly, I have Primaris in my brain. So when you go back to these older models, 4 wounds seems like not very much. That being said, 5 attacks. 5 attacks is really good. Really, really good. So it'll be 6 because he's a Space Marine in the first round of combat. So that's pretty mean. He's equipped with a plasma pistol, the Claw of the Jackal Wolf, frag grenades, crack grenades. You can only include one Lukas, obviously, because he's a special character. So his plasma pistol is exactly like the other ones. 12-inch range, strength 8, -3, 2 damage if you supercharge it. Now the Claw of the Jackal Wolf. It is a melee attack weapon. Strength +1, so that'll be strength 5, so that's pretty good. AP -2, damage flat 2. And each time an attack is made with this weapon, you can reroll the wound roll. So it's a lightning claw with 2 damage and an extra strength. So pretty good when you have 6 attacks. So that's pretty mean. His abilities, he has Angels of Death, all the normal stuff. And he has the Blood Claws Hero aura. This is the really important thing about him. It's what makes him unique, and whether or not he's worth bringing is kind of based on these next couple special rules. So it's an aura. While a friendly Blood Claws, Sky Claws, or Swift Claws unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a Blood Claws, Sky Claws, or Swift Claws model in that unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll. So Chapter Master reroll, which is becoming rarer and rarer, and it's a aura. It's a 6-inch bubble of reroll hits, but only for those old school firstborn, combat-oriented blood claws, sky claws, and swift claws. So on one hand, it's really, really powerful. On another hand, it's models that don't rank towards the top anymore in the book. So you could argue that if you were going to run a bunch of the old school Marines, firstborn, specifically blood claws, the jump pack blood claws, and the biker blood claws, he's almost a must take. At only 80 points and 4 power level, he hits hard and he gives that good bubble. So that seems pretty good. Next, we have Rebellious Presence. While another friendly Space Wolves unit is within 3 inches of this model, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristics of models in that unit. So that's not great. He gives you -1 leadership. I mean, it's fluffy. It goes well with his storyline, which we just heard. But -1 leadership, that's a little rough. I guess just take MSU so you don't have to worry about it. The Last Laugh. In the fight phase, if this model is destroyed by a melee attack made by an enemy model, roll off with your opponent. If you win the roll off, that enemy model's unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. Okay. So it's kind of like being able to explode, but instead of needing to roll a 6, you just got to outroll your opponent. So that's fun. It doesn't say what to do if you tie. No, I guess it only goes off if you win the roll off. Okay. All right. D6 mortal wounds. That's kind of fun from an 80-point little model. Pelt of the Doppelganger. Each time an attack is made against this unit, an unmodified hit roll of 1 to 3 always fails, irrespective of any abilities that weapon or the model making that attack may have. So you can only hit him on a 4-up. That's it. Shooting and combat. And he's a character, so most of the time you can't even target him. But once you can only hit him on a 4-up, no matter what. That's pretty cool. I like that. I mean, makes him harder to snipe. Makes him harder to hit in combat. So that's pretty great. Last special rule is Master of Mischief. This model cannot be a warlord and cannot have a warlord trait. So as I look through this, I'm not seeing an invul save. No invulnerable save. He only has 3-up power armor. That's it. And his only defensive bonus is you can only hit him on 4s. So keep that in mind, guys. He is easy to kill if they can land a hit on him. At 4 wounds, 4 toughness, and only power armor, he is so easy to kill. He's literally 2 Space Marines. That's it. T4. 3-up armor. 4 wounds. He is as easy to kill as 2 tactical Marines. So yeah, got to keep that in mind. But ways we can use him. So Claw the Jackalwolf is really good. If you can get him into combat with 6 attacks at -2 flat 2 at strength 5, that's super handy. With all the bonuses that Space Wolves can use, and Assault Doctrine and all that, exploding 6s, that's pretty good. He's only 80 points. That's his other big pro. So we're in the pros right now. Pros and cons list. Pros, Claw the Jackalwolf with 6 attacks. Great. Pros, 80 points, 4 power level. Nice and cheap. Cons. This is a big one. He gives your own units -1 leadership. It's a little crazy. He can't be the warlord. No warlord traits. That's another con. Yeah. Pros. He gives that aura to blood claws. So reroll all hits. It's pretty great. Also to sky claws and swift claws. Problem is swift claws are going to outrun him. They're going to be long gone. You could run him in like a Land Raider Crusader full of blood claws. And the turn they come out to charge is also the turn your sky claws drop from the sky and charge, so that everyone gets those rerolls. I could see that being really effective. But once again, you're spending a lot of points on firstborn Marines that have a lot of their own inbuilt issues. And a Land Raider, I guess you could do the whole thing in a Rhino, but then you have less blood claws, so the reroll's not, doing as much. I would love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on Lukas the Trickster. I'd love to hear ways you've used him, stories you have playing with him or against him. Is this a model anyone uses? Do any of you out there, any of you Space Wolf fans that watch these videos, does anyone use Lukas? He's only 80 points. I mean, I could definitely see a game or two where I would fit him in. Problem is, for his 80 points, I can get 2 units of 5 Fenrisian Wolves that help me get secondaries, that help me hold objectives, help me outflank and grab secondaries. Yes, Fenrisian Wolves are very easy to kill, but so is Lukas the Trickster. So, yeah, it's hard. 80 points on paper sounds cheap, but then you start thinking of things you can get with 80 points, and suddenly it's not quite as cheap. Look, if you're an old school Space Wolves player and you have tons of Blood Claws and you just love the fluff and lore of how you have to start out in the Blood Claws and work your way up the ranks, fighting tons of bloody battles in the snow and mud, up close and personal, I get that. I mean, some of the best stories from the Ragnar, Blackmane series was when he was a Blood Claw, just howling and charging in with all his buddies that became Space Wolves at the same time as him. So I get it. So if you were going to run an army like that, with maybe some Sky Claws dropping in, absolutely take Lukas the Trickster. You're not going to find an 80-point master or chapter master reroll bubble anywhere else. So yes, it only affects them, but it really affects them. They love this guy. Have him running next to his new buddy, Ragnar Blackmane, and you could have a pretty mean, surprising, old school, foot slogging Space Wolf list. So I can see how it works. Please let me know, guys, if any of you have ever used him successfully, how you like his new rules, what stratagems you like to use with him. I'm not going to go through all the stratagems because it's the same stratagems that you can use for any HQ in this book. So you just picture his stats and what he does, and it's the same little handful of stratagems that all the HQs can use. One other thing is that for only 4 power level, you can outflank him super cheap. So that's another option with him. That's pretty cool. Like I said, chime off in the comments. Let me know. This is Nick from Beer and Bat Reps. Like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. Tell your fellow Space Wolf buddies about it. And Sons of Russ, thank you for tuning in. We will be back soon. Cheers.